When you love someone, seeing them struggle with their mental health can be one of the hardest things in the world, especially when you know they need help, but don't know where to turn. That's why 988 Lifeline is here. 988's trained crisis counselors are available 24/7 by phone or text to provide you with the resources and support you need to help the people you love. No one should have to struggle alone. Call or text 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, day or night. 988. Hope has a new number.
Local news, national news, even feel-good news, delivering the topics that are relevant to you.
That's why I listen to Joe. He covers it all.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
All right, President Biden today tweets, or at least somebody from his account tweeted, 7 years ago today, it reads, our nation suffered what was then the deadliest mass shooting in American history. 49 people, predominantly Latino, LGBTQ people, lost their lives in a senseless act of gun violence. Biden goes on to write, today, on Pulse Remembrance Day, Jill and I pray for the families of the victims and every survivor who still carries the trauma. It's time for Congress to make common sense reforms to keep our communities safe. Americans deserve nothing less. That from President Biden. Let's see, at 10:04 a.m. this morning. It's been seen by some 1.8 million people. It is Pulse Remembrance Day today. And while there are ceremonies that take place at varying locations throughout the day today, there is not one unifying Pulse memorial. And by the way, President Biden in his tweet, again, I'm assuming someone else wrote this, but it says our nation suffered what was then the deadliest mass shooting in American history. It's no longer the biggest mass or the deadliest mass shooting in American history. Does anybody know what the current deadliest shooting in mass history is, or deadliest mass shooting in history is? Laurel or Paul, do you guys know the answer to that one? I hate to put you on the spot.
Would it be Las Vegas?
It is Las Vegas. Yeah. Yes, it is Las Vegas. 49 people killed in Orlando. In Vegas, 58 people were killed. 500 were injured. 500 people injured. Oh, my gosh. And I will never forget 7 years ago. It was a Sunday morning because it was late Saturday night at the Pulse, but I will never forget 7 years ago when we all got the middle-of-the-night phone call saying, hey, there's been a shooting in a nightclub, to which we all responded, yeah, a shooting in a nightclub is not worth me getting up on a Sunday morning to come into work, because a shooting at a nightclub is not terribly uncommon. But then, of course, as the story unfolded, we realized this wasn't just a garden variety, someone got shot at a bar. This was a massacre, a terrorist attack in our own community at the Pulse nightclub. Prior to this shooting, if I'm being honest with you, which that's all I can be, prior to this shooting, I hadn't the slightest idea where the Pulse nightclub was. Now I drive past it virtually every day down in Soto. It's on South Orange Avenue. And of course, at the time of the shooting, I lived in Winter Garden. Now I live in downtown, so it's much more common to drive past it now. But the stakeholders, if you will, in this memorial can't seem to find a common ground. The stakeholders are arguing amongst each other as to what this memorial should look like. According to the Orlando Sentinel today, the One Pulse Foundation, that nonprofit group, announced that it had redesigned the original plans for the museum and memorial after learning that the project would have cost the foundation more than $100 million. Now, One Pulse is going forward with the adaptive reuse of a 47,000 square foot industrial building that it owns in Orlando's Soto neighborhood. I wonder where that is, to turn it into a museum and a community space. The future for the site where the club is, again, this from the Orlando Sentinel today, is unknown. The site was intended to be donated, but plans fell through after the foundation announced that it could not reach an agreement with the nightclub property owners, which includes its former executive director and founder, Barbara Poma, who officially departed from the organization in April. Poma said she cannot donate the property due to a third-party investor that is not willing to give the property away for free. The foundation said it's exploring its options to build a memorial at the museum property, build a memorial on a site next to the former nightclub, or potentially build 2 memorials at both locations. Or that would be 1 memorial at each of the 2 locations. I think timing is everything, and striking while the iron is hot is everything. And in one sense, I don't have a dog in the hunt because I did not know anybody who was injured or killed in this. In another sense, I have a dog in the hunt because I live in Orlando. We all have a dog in the hunt because we all live here in Orlando. But I think the timing is quickly running out for building a memorial to the Pulse victims. And I don't mean to be callous. I don't mean to lack empathy, sympathy for those who lost a loved one. But mass shootings have become so common in the United States of America. It is such an ingrained, regrettably, part of our culture. How are we going to put up memorials to every mass shooting? I've been to a lot of the memorials where there were mass calamities. I've been to the Oklahoma City Memorial where a loaded truck full of ammonium nitrate was exploded, detonated in front of the Murrah Federal Building, killing 100 and change and wounding a whole lot of people. The memorial it's breathtaking. The memorial there is truly amazing. I've been to the memorial of September 11th, 9/11 in New York City. It is devastating. I mean, you cry from the minute you walk in to the minute you walk out, and you probably cry another 20 minutes after you walk out. I have been to the 6th floor museum where only one person died, John F. Kennedy. I've been to the museum in Dallas where Kennedy was murdered. And same thing. You start crying the second you walk in, and you don't stop crying until you're finished, until you walk out. But I feel like the emotional power of memorials for mass shootings greatly diminishes with each mass shooting that we have. And you know, as well as I do, that at some point, Las Vegas is no longer going to be the deadliest mass shooting in American history. I mean, Pulse is already number 2 on the list. Number 3 on the list was the Virginia Tech shooting, followed by Sandy Hook, and then the Sutherland Springs, Texas shooting at the First Baptist Church there. That rounds out the top 5. And I think beyond the communities where these take place, I don't know that a whole lot of people care. How many days do you spend awake thinking about the Sandy Hook shooting? How many days do you spend awake thinking about the shooting at Virginia Tech? How often do you think about the mass shooting at the Route 91 Festival in Las Vegas? And how many times do you think about the Pulse nightclub terror attack? I only think about the Pulse nightclub terror attack when I happen to be driving past the Pulse nightclub. And I think to myself when I drive by there, damn, what are they going to do with that place? Why can't they figure out what to do with it? Either reopen it, close it down, bulldoze it, make a museum, do something. Fish or cut bait. Poop or get off the pot. And I just feel like the timing may no longer exist. Now, of course, again, that having been said, if I had a loved one that was inside that club that died or was injured, I may think differently. So I'm willing to accept that maybe I'm being a little cavalier about this because I didn't know anybody there. I've never known anybody, for that matter, who's been killed in a mass shooting. Not to my knowledge, at least. But are you down for a museum and a memorial for the Pulse nightclub as much as you are for any of the other mass shootings that we have in America? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic and the WDBO app. Connie is up first here on WDBO. Hi, Connie.
Hi, Joe. I have to be honest. you're not being cavalier or callous, because I feel the same way. Enough with these memorials. And it isn't just for mass shootings now. They're thinking about putting up a memorial for that young boy who got thrown off the ride.
Oh, yes.
So there's a memorial there. You know, with all that's coming across the border and all that's coming towards our nation, we're going to run out of room for memorials. I can tell you that right now.
You know, it's funny. I was just having a conversation with a relative about humanity's need to bury our loved ones when they die. And, you know, at some point, we're going to run out of room. One would think, I know the earth is really large, but it just seems like we'll have people buried everywhere if we don't come up with a different solution. In Japan, they bury them stacked up or standing up to be able to take less room in Japan for buried people. But I just feel like enough is enough when it comes to memorials to mass shootings, because we're never going to be able to put up enough memorials unless and until we stem the tide of mass shootings in the United States.
But, Joe, it isn't just mass shootings, though.
Right,
Everyone wants a memorial for, you know, like I said, the young boy that got killed, they want a memorial.
Yeah,
somebody gets killed on a highway because they didn't put their light up the way they should have, they want a memorial. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Somebody, Connie, was speeding out in front of our building several months ago, and they drove across several lanes of oncoming traffic, fortunately missing the cars, but they literally hit a palm tree in the parking lot of WDBO. And they died. And there is a memorial that has existed out at the palm tree in front of our building for, gosh, it seems like it's coming up on a year now. You know, you kind of lose track of time, right? Mm-hmm. And I am sympathetic. I hate that family lost a loved one. I wish he wouldn't have been driving erratically that night when he slammed into our tree. And I understand their need. I understand their need to memorialize a loved one, but why does it have to be where he died? Why can't it be in the sanctity of their own home?
That's right.
In the sanctity of maybe a cemetery plot or a memorial that they've established in their own backyards somewhere, but not where he died out in front of our building.
That's what cemeteries are for. That's what urns are for.
Yeah.
Over your mantelpiece. Whatever you want to do is your business. But it's almost become where we all want to mourn with you, and I understand that. I feel bad, and I will pray. But at the same time, I don't want to be reminded every single solitary day about so-and-so or this or that. The guy that ran through that Christmas parade, killed how many young people and having a wonderful time. Enough is enough.
Yeah.
Now, 9/11, Joe, I got to tell you, was probably one of the days that I will never in my life ever forget.
None of us will.
Okay? None of us will. They built a memorial. I understand that, too, but maybe it's my warped way of thinking. I'd have built the towers back up twice as high.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's what I would have been like, no, we're going to build them twice as high. We're going to honor the people that we lost by building them twice as high to say, you're not going to take us down.
You know, at least, and I hate to say the words at least ahead of this, but at least 9/11 had a national impact. All of America felt 9/11. Even if we weren't in New York, weren't at the Pentagon, or weren't in Pennsylvania, even if we didn't deploy, I mean, all of America felt the attack of 9/11. Not everybody feels the Sandy Hook shooting. Not everybody feels the Pulse nightclub terror attack. Not everybody feels the Las Vegas massacre the same way that we did the 9/11 attack.
I think they just use it a lot, too, to go after guns. They do. Legal gun owners, Joe, are not going to do this kind of stuff. Or people that, if you want to do harm, you're going to find a way to do harm. Do you remember that one nightclub? It's been a long time. A gallon of gasoline and a lighter, and like 87 people died, not even from the fire, but from asphyxiation and being trampled. And that was a nightclub, a lighter and a gallon of gas. If you want to do harm, you're going to find a way to do it. But I think they use this to go after gun control and controlling people, and bad guys are going to get them no matter what. But
Connie, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your call. I can't say that I remember the gallon of gas and lighter. I'll have to look that one up. In Claremont, Alan is joining us here on the Joe Kelley Show. Hey, Alan.
Hey, Joe, it's always great to listen to your commentary on the way home. I look forward to it. So
thank you.
Thank you. And on Monday, this is pretty good. You hit the nail. I appreciate your true journalism of presenting all sides and not opinions as sides. So that's my kudos to you.
Thank you.
I have a problem. When I hear $100 million for a monument, a memorial, I think greed. Who's making money? And then we hear the Pulse group fighting among themselves. That doesn't help me being, I want to sign up, contribute to this thing. No. It's sad that it happens, but you talk about your previous caller hit the nail on the head, and you mentioned it too in your prelude to that. There's a difference between shootings and terrorists. We know that the Pulse was a terrorist. It was a terrorist, just like the 9/11 was a sick group of people.
With that sense, then, are you more inclined to want to see a memorial since it was a terror attack?
No, I don't. I think the previous caller hits the nail on the head. To me, when I think of terrorist attack, I think Columbine. That's the thing that etches in my mind. 9/11 and Columbine. The rest of them are kind of like, yes,
copycats,
I did not
maybe.
like you.
Alan, thank you so much, man. I'm so glad you called. I appreciate you listening. My name is Joe Kelley. The number is 844-580-WDBO, or you can use the open mic in the WDBO app.
When you love someone, seeing them struggle with their mental health can be one of the hardest things in the world, especially when you know they need help, but don't know where to turn. That's why 988 Lifeline is here. 988's trained crisis counselors are available 24/7 by phone or text to provide you with the resources and support you need to help the people you love. No one should have to struggle alone. Call or text 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, day or night. 988. Hope has a new number.
Now the three big things you need to know.
Three. The University of Wisconsin-Madison has a dream job for someone who's extremely lactose tolerant. The school's Center for Dairy Research is hiring a dairy taste tester to talk about food based on appearance, texture, taste, and aroma. Whoever gets the gig can expect to taste as many as a dozen pizzas and 24 cheese samples a week. Two. The Denver Nuggets will try to win their first NBA title tonight. They'll host the Miami Heat at Ball Arena tonight for Game 5 of the 2023 NBA Finals. The Nuggets enter with a 3-1 series lead after winning both games in Miami. One. The city of Miami says it's prepped for whatever may happen when President Trump is arraigned at the federal courthouse tomorrow. Mayor Francis Suarez says the city is used to handling large crowds and there will be enough law enforcement and fire rescue on duty. As of this time, the police chief reiterates there is no credible threats.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk.
Okay, I said I wasn't going to mention this on the air, but now I'm going to mention it on the air because we discussed this in the chat room. If you don't know, we have a video chat room where you can see us behind the scenes, and frankly, we have fun. It's a lot different conversations that take place in the chat room than we do on the air. And I mentioned on the chat room, I said, hey, I'm going to tell you guys something in the chat room that I'm not going to mention on the air, but then Laurel solved the problem that I was having, and so I thought, I should bring that up on the air. So I was just telling the people in the chat that my left tush cheek hurts. And I can't figure out why. It's like, why does that hurt? Why? I didn't fall down or anything. Why does my left tush cheek hurt? And then, Laura, you said what?
You went bowling with your kiddos.
I went bowling.
So you were landing on that leg a bunch, I bet.
No, it's so much worse. It is so much worse. Actually, now that you mentioned it, I wish I would have had this on video. But we bowled 2, what do you call it, rounds, frames?
Games. Frames. I don't know.
Games. So we bowled. We went to King's Lanes there on iDrive, right near Icon Park, and had a wonderful time with my 2 sons and my daughter. She's home for the summer from college. And I got my first strike yesterday, but in doing so, not my first strike ever, Paul. My first strike of the day yesterday. But when I got my first strike of the day, I fell into the lane, so I fouled, but I fell into the lane, Laurel, and that you have reminded me that I fell on my tush when I was bowling yesterday. I'm so glad I'm not on like the bowling channel or whatever that is where people see that you're actually bowling. So thank you for solving my left tush cheek mystery tonight.
That's what I'm here for.
Now I know why my tush hurts. All right, we are talking about memorials, roadside memorials, the Pulse nightclub memorials, mass shooting memorials, terrorist memorials.
Hey, Joe, I'm with you on these memorials. My cousin died on 9/11, and a memorial in New York is beautiful, and like you said, it makes you cry. But where people die, like at your studio, religious people, most people believe that's where the soul left this earth, and that's why they memorialize it. But I do agree with you that you can do it at home, but I'm just giving you the reason why people do it is because that's where the soul left. Have a great night. Thanks.
Thank you. TIL. I never thought about it that way before. Today I learned. And I will tell you that the memorial that's out front by our palm tree, it's growing smaller. Laurel, have you noticed that it is getting smaller?
Yeah.
And I don't know if someone is slowly dismantling it. I don't know if maybe the landscapers are, or one of our managers are, or one of our coworkers are. But I feel like someone is either slowly dismantling it, or it's just disintegrating on its own. It's just falling apart. But I would never in a million years go out there and take away parts of it. I think that is equally bad as setting up a display, is tearing someone else's memorial down. I don't like that idea at all. 844-580-WDBO, or hit me up in the open mic and the WDBO app.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. Join the conversation now by using the open mic in the WDBO app. Now, the Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's news and talk, WDBO.
Man, there is no questioning the loyalty of Donald Trump supporters. People who love Donald Trump love Donald Trump. These Donald Trump supporters were interviewed after the indictment was unsealed last week.
Doesn't matter to me. Not at all.
I think it's a bunch of bull. Trump ain't done nothing wrong. The thing Trump done is saved this country.
They're not going to let it stop. They can't stand the fact that he's running for president. And I am a Donald Trump fan.
It's probably altered, but it's just typical liberal propaganda. No, I wouldn't waste my time on a phony indictment. I don't care about the indictment. You could indict a bologna sandwich.
80% of likely Republican primary voters think that former President Trump should still be able to be president even if he's convicted in the classified documents case. A CBS News YouGov poll released Sunday finds that just 20% of likely GOP primary voters think that Donald Trump should not be able to serve again as president if he's convicted. If he's convicted, how exactly is he going to serve if he's convicted? Now, that having been said, if he gets elected to the White House, if he becomes the GOP nominee and beats Joe Biden, and that's a big if. But if he were able to do that, I think he would be able to serve out his 4 years before this would ever go to trial. I don't think he could be convicted. I don't think the timing of it. I think Trump's team, at the very least, will drag this trial out long enough. He's already waived his right to a speedy trial. So they're going to drag this out long enough that I don't think it's going to really make a difference whether or not he is convicted, because I think the conviction could come after he would complete his second term. But it is still mind-blowing to me that so many people's loyalty to Donald Trump extends even to if he was behind bars, even if he was convicted. And honestly, of those Trump supporters you just heard, not a one of them actually read the indictment. Not a one of them. And it's almost as if ignorance is bliss. You just rather not know what is in the indictment. I think it's important to read it and look at what's in it. And I'm gonna highlight a couple of paragraphs in particular in the indictment that are troublesome. Now, this comes as the Florida Republican Assembly is arranging for bus trips down to Miami tomorrow for the arraignment. So if you wanted to catch a bus and head down tomorrow, they're telling you to bring snacks. There's 4 buses available. And the buses are going to be departing at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. at the Walmart at 8101 John Young Parkway. That's interesting. It doesn't say North or South John Young Parkway. Can you look that up real quick? 8101 John Young Parkway. That's got to be South John Young Parkway. I don't think there is a North John Young Parkway that has a Walmart on it. And then it comes back at 9:30 tomorrow night to the same address, the Walmart at 8101 John Young Parkway in Orlando. So if you want to take I'm going to say it's a free bus because it doesn't say what the prices are. It doesn't say that they're going to charge you for it. But you're supposed to RSVP via the chapter president. That's the FloridaRepublicanAssembly.com. FloridaRepublicanAssembly.com if you want to catch a bus ride, Laurel.
It's south, yeah, like Paul's saying. It's South John Young Parkway.
Okay, so it's down near that mall and stuff down there on South John Young Parkway. Well, it's down near the Walmart, evidently, at 8101 South John Young Parkway in Orlando, 32819.
Yeah, John Young and Sand Lake Road.
Oh, okay,
That's the and then you're right near the turnpike there, too.
And there's a train station near there. There's a Sunrail train station right near there as well. Did you have more, Laurel?
Nope.
You have that?
I have a bug that's flying across my microphone. It's driving me nuts.
I see you keep waving around in there. I thought you were trying to...
It's a gnat that keeps bumping into my face.
I thought you were trying to get my attention. It's 5:42 here on the Joe Kelley Show.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
All right, Paul Cross is checking our drive here on a Monday night. What's up, PC?
Well, we got some trouble in Lake County right now, Joe. On the turnpike southbound, right before Hancock, we've got an accident there. They have just opened up both of the lanes. So they had the left lane closed with first responders. Both lanes are open right now. Traffic getting a little bit better through there, but if you're heading down into the Orlando area, you are going to find some delays after Howey Road on the turnpike. Also, lots of brake lights I-4 westbound from Princeton onto the 408 ramps. From the WDBO Triple Team Traffic Center, I'm Paul Cross.
Donald Trump made this comment over the weekend, and I wanted to share it with you. I thought this was just a powerful, less than a minute comment from Donald Trump.
We are a failing nation. We are a nation in decline. And now these radical left lunatics want to interfere with our elections by using law enforcement. It's totally corrupt, and we can't let it happen. This is the final battle. With you at my side, we will demolish the deep state. We will expel the warmongers from our government. We will drive out the globalists. We will cast out the communists. We will throw off the sick political class that hates our country. We will roll out the fake news media. We will expose the rhinos for what they are. We will defeat Joe Biden, and we will liberate America from these villains once and for all. We will liberate. We're going to liberate our country.
Now, there are two camps of people that exist right now. There's the camp of people that believe that Donald Trump is being subjected to a two-tier criminal justice system, that Republicans and conservatives are going to be targeted and Democrats and liberals are not going to be targeted. And the other camp of people are the people who say that Donald Trump broke the law. I'm here to tell you that both camps of people are right. Both are absolutely right. Donald Trump is being subjected to a two-tier criminal justice system, and Donald Trump broke the law, at least according to the evidence as presented in the indictment, the 49-page, 34-count felony indictment. In paragraph 6, I told you there were two paragraphs that are most damning for Donald Trump, and it's paragraph 6 and paragraph 54. In paragraph 6, federal prosecutors said that Donald Trump showed classified documents on two separate occasions to associates who did not have clearance to view the highly sensitive material while hosting them at the Trump National Golf Club at Bedminster, New Jersey. The DOJ charges that Trump had boxes of documents brought to his summer residence in New Jersey in May 2021. In a separate incident in either August or September of 2021, according to the indictment, Trump also showed a classified map related to a military operation believed to be an invasion of Iran to a representative of his Political Action Committee. The former president again told the guests that he should not be showing them the map, according to the court record. Paragraph 54 of the indictment includes statements made by Trump in May 2022 following a grand jury subpoena that required the former president to return all documents under his possession. According to testimony by an unknown Trump attorney, the former president was told that his legal team would need to search for the documents included in the subpoena, which would entail sifting through boxes and boxes and boxes that the president took from the White House. The attorney testified that Trump responded, quote, "I don't want anybody looking. I don't want anybody looking through my boxes. I really don't. Well, what happens if we just don't respond at all or don't play ball with them? Wouldn't it be better if we just told them that we don't have anything here?" So clear obstruction of justice there from Donald Trump. You have probably heard the name Jonathan Turley. Jonathan Turley is a constitutional lawyer. He's a regular guest on the Fox News channel. Most conservatives have for years now believed in and trusted in the legal opinions of Jonathan Turley. And Jonathan Turley even says that the Trump indictment is extremely damning and a hit below the waterline. Anybody who knows anything about the Navy, a hit below the waterline, if it's a bomb, if it is a kamikaze pilot, if it's a torpedo, if you hit below the waterline, the ship sinks a hell of a lot faster. And a hell of a lot more likely to sink if you hit below the waterline. So that is what Jonathan Turley is referring to. I could go into specificity, but how many lawyers are listening right now and how many lawyers are hosting this show? Certainly no lawyers are hosting this show, but Jonathan Turley, sometimes you have to pick an expert that you trust, an expert that you believe in. I could either go to law school for God knows how many years and how many dollars, or I could just trust someone, and I have trusted in the legal advice of Jonathan Turley for years. I think he's always been a trustworthy go-to kind of guy on those matters. What do you think? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. A funny comment. I don't really... The left is trying to make hay out of this, and I don't see it that way. I just think it's kind of goofy and kind of embarrassing. But Jim Bridenstine, you might recognize the name. Jim Bridenstine most recently lived here off and on. I don't know that he lived here, but he certainly had a job here in Central Florida. I think he lived in the D.C. area because NASA's main headquarters is in Washington, D.C. But Jim Bridenstine was the NASA administrator, so he'd be here for the flights and that kind of stuff. Prior to Jim Bridenstine being the NASA administrator, though, he was a member of Congress. He was a member of the United States House of Representatives. And Jim Bridenstine, like Ron DeSantis before him, there was a whole wave of mostly conservative politicians who decided to sleep in their offices at their Capitol office buildings. Instead of, renting or leasing or buying a home, a lot of them, because real estate is so expensive in the D.C. area, a lot of members of Congress will share homes, in the District of Columbia. But then they're back home in their home districts. Of course, they own their homes. But sometimes they'll share homes. Well, a lot of lawmakers decided to skip that process and instead started to sleep in their offices. And Jim Bridenstine, at a campaign event for Ron DeSantis, shared this lovely story.
He lived in his office like I lived in my office, and together we would take a shower in the basement. And we had a daily meeting when we took showers in the basement. Am I allowed to say that?
I just think that's amusing. People on the left are trying to make hay out of it, but they're saying since they lived in the Capitol building, their only place to shower was in the health club, the gym there, and they would get naked and shower. Well, of course, they get naked in the shower. And they would have their daily meetings. Coming up next, Mike Pence and Ron DeSantis want to reverse a liberal decision that was made about renaming American military bases. Why I disagree with them next.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Talk and discussion on the latest breaking national news.
Crude oil prices continue to fall.
Local news.
You're not going to have Disney have its own government in Central Florida.
And stories that matter to you. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let your voice be heard on the Joe Kelley Show.
Joe, you got to get like the Democrats. They don't talk bad about their people. You have talked bad about Trump ever since he was elected, all through his election. You point out the bad stuff. And look what we've got, Joe. We got another Joe in there.
I get it. Look, man, I totally get it. But here's the deal. I make certain assumptions about our audience. I've got a job. My job is to know our listeners, to know our audience. And the majority of our audience that are listening right now wouldn't vote for Joe Biden if their lives depended on it. Wouldn't vote for a Democrat if their lives depended on it. Vetting Democrat candidates is irrelevant to people who would never vote for a Democrat in the first place. That's me. There's no way I would vote for Joe Biden. And any chance I get, I remind people that Joe Biden has lost it. I mean, he has absolutely lost his marbles. And that leaves me pretty much just talking about Republicans because we do have an interest in vetting Republicans. We want to see which one is going to rise to the top. We want to see, which one is going to be the standard bearer for the Republican Party heading into the presidential election. Whoever it is, whatever their flaws are, I will be supporting that candidate heading into the general election. But we've got quite a bit of time ahead of us to vet the candidates and figure out which candidate we are more inclined to support. I know who I'm more inclined to support today, but it could change by tomorrow.
Look, Trump broke the law. I don't think there's any question about it. But so did Biden, and maybe even more egregiously. And they're doing nothing to Biden, and they're prosecuting Trump again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
It's scary.
I share that frustration, which is why I said both can be true. That is, there is a two-tiered justice system, and Donald Trump broke the law, and we should address both of those issues separately.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Triple Team Traffic.
Still seeing this broken down vehicle on the cameras here. It's 417 southbound on the exit ramp to Moss Park Road, and it is blocking the left lane there. Heavy slowing I-4 westbound through Lake Mary, and then from Parr onto the 408 ramp, Sand Lake to 535 and 192 into Champions Gate. ProTech Air Conditioning and Plumbing Service for honesty, integrity, and 100% customer satisfaction. Call ProTech 407-291-1644 or visit ProTechAC.com. From the WDBO Triple Team Traffic Center, I'm Paul Cross.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. In-depth segments on topics that matter to Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
I love your show every night. You're doing great, bud.
So I know you did not watch the Tony Awards last night or whatever night it was on this weekend, because why would you watch the Tony Awards on TV? Why? Well, there was a highly politicized moment when an actress from Orlando, from Eustis actually, African-American, her name is Danae Benton. Danae Benton had this to say at the Tony Awards.
Hi, I'm Danae Benton, actor, thank you, and proud CMU alum. Earlier tonight, CMU and the Tony Awards presented the 2023 Excellence in Theater Education Award. And while I am certain that the current governor of my home state of Florida will be changing.
And the crowd goes wild because it's the Tony Awards. Of course, the crowd goes wild. Isn't she clever? Calling him the Grand Wizard. And yet I bet actress Danae Benton couldn't tell you anything about what's in any of the bills that the governor signed for which she thinks it's cute to call him the Grand Wizard. That is just embarrassing. And no wonder nobody watches the Tony Awards. I would look at the ratings for it, but what's the point? Nobody watches the Tony Awards. Now, that having been said, there was something that DeSantis and Mike Pence both said over the weekend that I find concerning. First, Mike Pence.
We will give our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guard the support they need to accomplish their mission. We will end the political correctness in the hallways of the Pentagon, and North Carolina will once again be home to Fort Bragg. Fort Liberty, North Carolina.
So that was Mike Pence. Here's Ron DeSantis.
And I also look forward to, as president, restoring the name of Fort Bragg to our great military base in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and thank the people that have served there, and they're proud of their service there. And it's an iconic name and an iconic base, and we're not going to let political correctness run amok in North Carolina.
Now, I agree. It is an iconic name, and it's an iconic base. It's the biggest military base in the United States. I think by landmass, it's one of the biggest military bases on the planet. It is a huge base, and obviously a huge, huge, huge history of men and women who have served on that base known as Fort Bragg. Now, I will be the first to admit that prior to the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, there was no discussion about getting rid of some of the base names. But it was remarkable that we have so many bases that are named after loser generals and loser military leaders like Braxton Bragg. Braxton Bragg was known for not only owning slaves, more importantly, for losing key Civil War battles that contributed to the Confederacy's downfall. The guy is, in Donald Trump's words, a loser. Braxton Bragg should never have had a military base named after him. We should never name a military base after an enemy leader that we trounced. And so they changed the name of the base. It's already been done, by the way. It's not called Fort Bragg anymore. It's now called Fort Liberty. Which, frankly, Liberty is a much better name than naming it after a failed Confederate general. And frankly, the same goes for all the other military bases that are named after failed Confederate generals. Why are we naming military bases after opponents that we have trounced? Would we do it in any other situation? Would we name one of our bases Fort Bin Laden? Hell no. And we should never have named Fort Bragg Fort Bragg. Camp Liberty is a much better name, or Fort Liberty is a much better name for that than Fort Bragg is. And so I disagree with both the governor and the former vice president on bringing back, because it's already been changed. If we had this discussion a couple years ago, maybe we could come to some sort of agreement that let's go ahead and just keep Fort Bragg because it's going to cost too much to change it anyway. But it's already been changed. So why in the world would we change it back? Just because it happened under the Biden administration doesn't mean it's something that we have to reverse. Man, I don't want to get into a point where every president that takes office, the first thing they do, just like Joe Biden did, is try to undo the prior presidency. I mean, on Biden's very first day, he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline and did a number of other things that were all efforts to thwart Donald Trump's legacy as president. Donald Trump did it to Barack Obama. And I don't want to live in a country where every new president tries to, their main goal is to undo everything that the previous president did. And while I agree with you that the political correctness has run amok in our military bases, when we're hiring, trans people to create content to try to lure, more applicants, more troops, to try to get their recruiting numbers up, to me is insane. Changing pronouns, insane. Having military leaders in drag and doing drag shows on military bases is insane. So is naming a military base after a loser of a military general. That's insane. Should never have done it. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Now that Fort Bragg has already been changed to Fort Liberty, do you agree with Ron DeSantis and Mike Pence that we should go all through all the time and effort and money to change it back to a loser Confederate general, Braxton Bragg? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. Use the open mic in the WDBO app.
This is Daniel from New Smyrna Beach. Joe, do you know how much it costs to rename a base? It's millions of dollars. It's not worth it for any price.
And out of the billions or trillions that the Pentagon spends to change the letterhead and some signs at a military base is a pittance compared to our government waste, fraud, and abuse. And honestly, this reminds me of the argument over the incandescent light bulb. Do you remember when we got rid of the incandescent light bulb in 2007? Do you remember which president did that? That was President George W. Bush that did that. It wasn't a liberal. It was a conservative. It was a Republican who said, let's get rid of the incandescent light bulbs. And yet when Donald Trump took office, Donald Trump reversed it. He had the Department of Energy revert back to previous standards. So suddenly, for all of us who went out and bought neon lights and the LED lights and all the rest of those lights, for all of us who went out and bought all these high-tech and at the time expensive light bulbs, only to have Donald Trump reverse it and make incandescent bulbs available again is frustrating. Because now with Joe Biden in office, his Department of Energy reversed it again. Did you know that? And now we are going to have to revert again all of our light bulbs. So George Bush signed it into law. Donald Trump had his Department of Energy reverse it. He didn't sign it into law. He just had his Department of Energy reverse it. Several states went ahead and kept the law in place. Most states did not. And now, with the latest effort there from Joe Biden, we will once again outlaw incandescent light bulbs in August of this year. August 1st. After that, some incandescent and halogen bulbs will still be available for purchase. Most of those are going to be decorative that aren't your traditional light bulbs that fit in traditional lamps. So to me, the going back and forth on the light bulbs and going back and forth on base names is exhausting, and it's not necessary. While I did not agree with the decision from George Bush to get rid of incandescent bulbs, I got to say that once I outfitted my whole house with LEDs and the fluorescent bulbs, I started to like them. I bet a lot of you guys did too. There was so much more control over these high-tech light bulbs. I can change the color. I can set them up with my smart home. I can have them so when I walk in, I can say, turn off the lights, turn on the lights. I can say, make the light green, make it yellow, make it blue, make it orange. Have it flash between all the colors. Make it strobe. I mean, I can do anything with these smart bulbs. They're amazing. But then we got the incandescent dumb bulbs back, and now we're back to having smart bulbs. It's exhausting. I am worn out, and I'm not changing my light bulbs again. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Your thoughts on changing the base name from Fort Bragg back to, from Fort Liberty, I should say, back to Fort Bragg. And while you're at it, what do you think about the light bulbs? Are you tired of having to change your light bulbs again and again and again? Are you wondering why suddenly there's a new law that's about to outlaw incandescent bulbs when you were thinking all along that we already outlawed incandescent bulbs? Well, we did, but we inlawed them again, only to outlaw them again. It is exhausting, is it not? All right, we'll get your phone calls and comments coming up in a moment at 844-580-WDBO. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Look for the Joe Kelley Show podcast wherever you get your podcast. You'll find it in Apple, the Apple Podcast. You'll be able to find it in Spotify. You can find it in the WDBO app. Wherever you get your podcasts, look for the Joe Kelley Show podcast. You'll also find the Joe Kelley Show Facebook page. Give it a follow and a like, and I certainly do appreciate that. We'll continue with your calls and comments coming up straight ahead. Stay right there.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. News, weather, traffic, all the things you want on your drive home. Plus, Joe Kelley being, well, Joe Kelley. Now, the Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's News and Talk, WDBO.
It is so stupid to change the name of a base when all you have to do is give new names to the new bases that qualify for the new thinking. It's just so, it's stupid.
Well, I don't want you to be all angry when you go home. Don't get angry about this. It's all right. You'll be okay. And I understand what you're saying. You're saying that name new bases can't, Fort Liberty or something along those lines. When do you think the last military base was built in the United States? How often do you think we build military bases in the United States? The last base that was built was a small base in El Paso, Texas in 1985. 85. That was the last base that was built. That was an Air Force installation. Prior to that, the newest base, the youngest military bases are in California, and they all opened from 1952 to 1964. And two are Air Force bases in North Dakota that opened in 1957. Generally speaking, we're not building new bases. So there aren't new bases for which to give these names to, if that makes any sense. 844-580-WDBO. John is in Orlando joining us here on the Joe Kelley Show. Hey, John, thanks for calling.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about Mike Pence for a second. He also endorsed the Fort Bragg renaming, or pledged to rename Fort Bragg. But I'm reminded that 129 regiments of the state of Indiana fought in the war and fought in the Battle of Chattanooga and the Battle of Chippewa, in which soldiers from the state of Indiana were killed. And we're talking about the former governor of the state of Indiana endorsing the opposing general that killed troops from Indiana.
Which would be Bragg.
That's right.
Yeah. So for
Bragg killed Union troops from Indiana, and Michael Pence is the former governor of Indiana.
That is the Pence being a governor of Indiana, I knew, but the other part of that history is new to me, and that makes it all that more interesting, doesn't it?
Well, Indiana was a northern state.
Yeah.
Indiana fought on the Union side.
Yep.
So, and they had 129 units in the war. So anyhow, I'm repeating myself, but I just wanted to bring that point to you.
Yeah, it's very good, John. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you called. 844-580-WDBO, or use the open mic in the WDBO app.
Hey, Joe, as far as the light bulbs, leave them alone until they burn out and then replace them.
Right. Well, yes. But when one burns out and you have to replace it, and let's say it's part of a bigger room, say the kitchen or a bedroom or something like that, where you have multiple lights, it really looks just cruddy when you put an LED light in the same room, in the same setting as an incandescent light. For that matter, it looks bad when you put a 40-watt incandescent light next to a 100-watt incandescent light. I mean, you want your light bulbs to match. And so as I replace light bulbs, I'll replace an entire room of light bulbs with the new light bulbs rather than with the incandescent light bulbs. Of course, that was back at a time in which I thought that the United States had outlawed incandescent bulbs only to have them brought back, only to have them outlawed again.
I'll tell you what's exhausting, Joe. It's the government regulating every tiny little bit of our lives. It's ridiculous. If you want LEDs, buy LEDs. If you want incandescent, buy incandescent. If you want gas, buy gas. If you want electric, buy electric.
Totally agree with you, and it is interesting as you bring that up. We don't want the government controlling every aspect of us, and which is why when George W. Bush signed that into law, I thought this is a terrible idea. I hate this. I don't like the government telling us what light bulbs we can and cannot buy. But it is the same argument that Joe Biden is making about gas stoves and gas furnaces today that George W. Bush made back in the early 90s. Late 90s or whenever it was, that he banned incandescent bulbs. And that was, it's better for society. I mean, that was George W. Bush making that decision, that it's better for American society. It's better for energy consumption if we have more energy efficient bulbs. And now Joe Biden is saying basically the same thing about gas stoves, which is why I didn't like it when George W. Bush introduced the ban on incandescent bulbs. And I do not like it that Joe Biden is floating the idea of banning gas ranges, gas stovetops, gas furnaces, gas ovens, gas anything at your house. 844-580-WDBO or use the open mic in the WDBO app.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. Connected to our community. Talk local issues and events with Joe Kelley. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let Joe know what interests you. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
So our friend Karen, who joins us in our chat on the WDBO Facebook page, asks, how long ago did they change it to Fort Liberty from Fort Bragg? Okay, you ready? Last week. It was literally last week that they changed the name. And so you can rest assured that there are still plenty of signages and maps and others that say Fort Bragg. They've not been able to change all of the signage. I mean, the Fort Bragg exists everywhere in signage throughout the military base. But keep in mind that by the time either Pence or DeSantis becomes president, that's going to be 2 years from now. So 2 years from now, they're going to be accustomed to calling it Fort Liberty, and all of the signage is going to be changed to Fort Liberty by the time DeSantis would have the ability to change it back to Fort Bragg. I'm sorry, but that's an exercise in futility. Why in the world would we do that? To me, that just lacks, that is raw meat, red meat that you throw at conservatives, which, I don't do it here on this radio show, and I don't like it when others do it as well. But that is just something to patronize conservatives, saying, all right, we'll switch it back. And I just think that's a pointless endeavor to switch it back from the Camp or Fort Liberty that they've named it now. Let's go to Deltona. Ken is joining us here on the Joe Kelley Show. Ken, I'm glad you called.
Hey, Joe, listen. Let me say my piece first. I love you to death. There's two reasons. You beat cancer, and you are one hell of a family guy.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Hang on, but there's a big butt coming. Go ahead. Get to the butt first.
Okay. Listen, guy, instead of talking about the Republicans, listen, I mean, why don't we talk about facts? The biggest slave owner in the U.S. was a black gentleman. The people who gave the blacks over to us were black people. Why don't we talk about Biden, what he's done? It's that same old story, and I'm 62 years old. If you hear something long enough, you're going to believe it. And you brought up the Tony Awards. Who watches the Tony Awards to get that one little girl's excerpt in about calling our governor a grand wizard?
That's what I said. Nobody watches the Tony Awards.
I know, but why do you bring it up? You listen. You're an older gentleman, as am I. We were well educated. We studied history. But this now generation, all they take out of that is grand wizard. And that's the only thing that kills me about you. I love your show, but, man, let's get on the Democrats. Let's get on our Republicans that say something when it's convenient.
All right.
Like
let me give the stage to you, Ken. What would you like to say about the Democrats?
Oh, my God. Where do you start? I mean, come on. What are we doing?
Are you going to vote?
No,
Are you going to vote? Are you going to vote for any Democrats ever?
Let me tell you something. This is going to shock you what I said.
Mm-hmm.
I like Kennedy.
Okay.
He's old school Democratic. He's for the people, not making money like these Democrats are. I mean, come on. You have even spotted the yearly wages these people make.
Oh, yeah.
And when they come out of office, they're multi-billionaires.
Oh, yeah. Look at, Joe Biden is a classic example of that. Of course, he's been grifting and taking bribes and everything else like that.
I know, and here's the thing. The Republicans that we have in office now, and Joe, please accept this as I love you, but we're carrying a knife into a gunfight. If we don't play by their dirty rules, we're not going to win. And that's all I have to say.
Well, Ken, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I would agree that there are certain rules with the Democrats that we should be playing by, one of which is ballot harvesting. And that's one of the things that Ron DeSantis says that they plan on doing. And I'm all for that. I think Ron DeSantis is right on the money on that one, that we Republicans need to be ballot harvesting and beat the Democrats at their own game on that subject. Terry is joining us here on the Joe Kelley Show. Hey, Terry, how are you?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Born in Arizona. But I wanted to comment on the LED lights. When they made that change, a lot of the northern states changed all their traffic lights to LED. But then they found out when the snowstorms came, they covered up all the traffic lights, and LED lights did not generate heat.
Yeah.
So all of the traffic lights at the intersections were just literally covered with snow, and they were not melting off of the traffic lights.
I think we call that the law of unintended consequences.
And on a second note, with everybody in Congress, I think that once they reach 67, I think they just need to really retire. They're very wealthy. They can afford it. You know, they're milking their job, to be honest with you. And there's no disrespect to the elderly people. I'm turning 65. But they've made their money. They've spoken in they're old school, and we're no longer old school.
Terry, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I would support term limits, and I would support age limits. And you know, anytime you mention age limits, people get kind of nervous because it would apply to both Joe Biden and to Donald Trump, quite frankly.
Well, doing a great job. Love the show.
Thank you, Terry.
It's a little bit of Orlando when I'm here in Arizona. Bored to death.
Well,
it's a little bit like home watching the show. So thank you very much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that a whole lot, checking in from Arizona. I will tell you, it's hot here today as well, 92, but at least there it is, the dry heat, as they say. To which I always reply, so is your oven, but you don't put your head in your oven. It's too damn hot. So thank you so much for your phone call. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. Use the open mic in the WDBO app.
Linda in Mount Dora on Fort Liberty versus Fort Bragg. In that specific instance, it was a really dumb move. All you needed to do was eliminate the second G in Bragg. So people who have gone through Fort Bragg still have a Fort Bragg to talk about, to visit, and it's no longer a Confederate general. It's a place where you go and you get bragging rights.
And I think that open mic kind of goes hand in hand with this one.
Hey, Joe, unless you've served at Fort Bragg, trained at Fort Bragg, fought wars out of Fort Bragg, you will never know the true meaning of what it actually means to a soldier
of the name Fort Bragg. Has nothing to do with a Confederate general.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for not saying, unless you served at Fort Bragg, you should have no opinion about Fort Bragg. Thank you for not saying that. And I do understand, which is why I go back to before George Floyd, before it was discussed about changing the base names, I would have been much more open to keeping it Bragg just because of the tradition of it, because so many men and women have been through Fort Bragg as part of their training or additional training or whatever it may be. I absolutely understand that. And my father taught me that with his service in the Navy, and I'll drill down onto that coming up next.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, the three big things you need to know.
3. A new study says obesity could cause damage to the brain that's irreversible. Published in the journal Nature Metabolism, the study's authors says their goal was to look at the gut-brain connection. At Harvard Medical School, professor said that the brains of people with obesity continued to lack the chemical responses that tell your body, okay, you ate enough, with no signs of reversibility. 2. Almost 3,500 Reddit pages are going dark today. It's in protest of the San Francisco-based tech company raising prices for developers of third-party apps. As part of the backlash, some subreddits will make their communities private for 48 hours. 1. Former President Trump arrives at the federal courthouse in Miami for his arraignment tomorrow, and the mayor says his city is ready. Francis Suarez says the city is used to handling large crowds, and there will be enough law enforcement and fire rescue in the city. As of this time, the police chief reiterates there are no credible threats.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Insightful.
You tell the truth from your point of view.
Entertaining.
Man, that guy is a lot taller than he sounds on the radio.
And engaging.
When we hear you on the radio, it's a good thing.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Hey, Joe, unless you've served at Fort Bragg, trained at Fort Bragg, fought wars out of Fort Bragg, you will never know the true meaning of what it actually means to a soldier of the name Fort Bragg. Has nothing to do with a Confederate general.
And I that part I get. I understand that part. That is the legacy of Fort Bragg. And I learned that lesson from my father. My father was a commander in the United States Navy, and he served aboard an aircraft carrier called the Oriskany. Now, the Oriskany may sound slightly familiar to you. It was used in Vietnam. The Oriskany is also the ship where John McCain had a mishap on the flight deck, and there was a big fire and an explosion. And most recently, in fact, the absolute last piece of history from the USS Oriskany was when they sank it off the Florida Gulf Coast. And they sank it on purpose as part of a reef building process out there. And my father taught me the value of your military home. And the Oriskany was my father's home for more than 2 years. And, I mean, his closest friends, his closest mates, he made on board that ship. And when the Discovery Channel followed the sinking of the Oriskany and the explosives that they put in it and all the hazmat that they had to clear from the ship, all that stuff before sinking it to become an artificial reef. And I watched that Discovery Channel series with my father prior to us losing him. And I looked over at my dad, and he was crying as the Oriskany went below the waterline. And seeing your dad cry is something that I think most men can't get used to. I think I've seen my dad cry in fact, I'm positive I've seen my dad cry on 2 occasions. When his mother died and when they sank the Oriskany. And I didn't know what to say to my dad. I don't know no one knows what to say to their dad when their dads are crying. But I said to my dad, at least we sunk the Oriskany on our terms rather than the enemy sinking the Oriskany under their terms. I don't know if that made my dad feel better or not, but my dad taught me the value in pride in your military home. And that part I get about Fort Bragg. And that's why maybe it should have been left Fort Bragg in the first place. But it hasn't been left Fort Bragg. It's Fort Liberty. And even if DeSantis and Pence were to keep their campaign promises, that's going to be a year and a half, 2 years from now before they get around to it. And that means they're going to have to rename the base all over again. And that is an effort in futility as far as I'm concerned. Leave it. Taxpayer dollars don't need to reverse the name again. I'm Joe Kelley. The third hour of Sean Hannity is coming up next. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
When you love someone, seeing them struggle with their mental health can be one of the hardest things in the world, especially when you know they need help, but don't know where to turn. That's why 988 Lifeline is here. 988's trained crisis counselors are available 24/7 by phone or text to provide you with the resources and support you need to help the people you love. No one should have to struggle alone. Call or text 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, day or night. 988. Hope has a new number.